Right, not sure what happened there. I think I heard the camera go off for some reason. I'm not having any luck with making videos at the moment. So there, sky, pull a little bit of cloudy stuff out. Clear water. Squeeze out the brush. Pull out some frothy bits. Now this is still wet, so I'm going to use my slightly smaller moppy thing, and here I've got that. I don't want it really autumnal, I want it more springy, so I'm going to put raw sienna, lots and lots of raw sienna, and just a touch of Hooker's green. Into that I'm going to mix a little bit of lemon yellow to give it a sort of springy colour. Mix some Hooker's green into the sky colour, just drop it in towards the base. And I'll let that all blend in. While this lot is still damp, I'm going to mix up some raw umber. Touch of ultramarine. I'll show you what I'm doing. I've got the raw umber there, the ultramarine there, it just goes in, and that is my sky mix, and I put some green into it for the dark bits. That's where I mixed up my yellow green. Now I'm purposely putting fairly thick paint onto the join there, and that should pull up into the tree bits. That's that. Into my dark, and add a little bit of the Hooker's green. Just to get this dark riverbanky bit. Some of the lighter green towards the bottom. I'm not actually doing any painting, you may notice, as such. I'm just putting paint on and letting it mix itself. because I've got wet paper and wet paint, it all blends into itself. I'm going to put a tiny touch of light red into some bits of that because we've got reddy bits of earth showing through. Remember, none of this, or very little of this, will show in the finished picture. This is just a base for the gouache to go on top. Now, the foreground, I'm going to put a lot of lemon yellow into that light green mix, put some more raw sienna, and then I'm going to put a really bright yellowy green foreground here. Blob, blob, blob. Hooker's green into that. Well, that is not quite dry. Put some tree trunks growing into there. Some stuff just to give me an idea where I'm going to put things. Mix a little bit of the blue into it. There. Now for the river, that is dry paper. I'm going to mix some ultramarine, touch of the brown into it. Now I'm going to almost dry the brush and just drag this rivery colour around here. There, it's got sprinkles. Now I'm going to use this little 1/2 inch square brush. I'm mixing ultramarine and umber into this dark colour here. Dark colour there. Ultramarine, umber. And that's the darky greeny colour that I had before. I need a bit more water. Sorry, drop more water. And they're sort of milky consistency, and all that's for is just to indicate where I'm going to put these trees. Little one here. And this one is a lovely double trunker. Just anchoring those trees to the top of the ridge. And while I've got some dark paint, I'll just put in a little bit of undercutting on the bank. Will help differentiate between the water and what's it. Right, okay, that's the underpainting. The fussy picture has been changed into a very loose watercolour underpainting. I will leave that to dry completely, and then we'll go over and make a gouache painting on that. It's almost like doing a monochrome underpainting when you're working in oils. It's the same sort of principle, but I've got areas of colour which, when that's dry, I can scumble over and see if I can leave some other lovely random marks that are made by wet into wet watercolour. Okay, that's the first part. Again, it's tricky to see with this camera because it hasn't got a flip up back. So anyway, here I am, second part of my gouache painting. This is the bit I did this morning, now totally bone dry. Working from that photograph, if you remember. Of course you remember, it's about 30 seconds ago on your thing. Right, okay. This is my new gouache palette. I thought long and hard about this. I'm specialising a bit in gouache, and I've been experimenting with colours and all sorts of stuff. I've invested in this Arnold Lowry palette, which is quite cheap, but it serves my purpose perfectly well. It's got 16 wells, it's got a lid to keep everything nice and dry, and it's also got, it's over there, some sponge thing that you put on top and it'll keep them wet. The problem I have with gouache is that when it dries out, you have to scrub it to get it. This, according to all my research, will, if I put the sponge on top, it'll keep it moist for quite a long time. There's plenty of room to mix, and I've invested in a bunch of new paints as well. Again, I researched the colours, and I think this should cover every eventuality that I can throw at it. So they're all Winsor & Newton designer, titanium white, Naples yellow, primary yellow, Windsor red, magenta, primary blue, Prussian blue, mid green, olive green. Now that's my primaries and my greens. I'll talk as I go along about why I decided to include two pre-mixed greens. Down here we've got mid-grey, which mid-grey number 3 I think it is. I use a lot of neutral colours when I'm painting in gouache, and that's a good starting point. I like that colour. Then we've got raw sienna, burnt sienna, raw umber, and if I mix that with that I get burnt umber, sepia Venetian red, which is a redder version of that, indigo, and bright violet. I like, with gouache, I like purple shadows. I've worked out that with these particular colours I should be able to paint anything from a portrait to a vase of flowers, but mainly landscapes, because that's what I do most of. So we shall see how I get on. Brushes, I tend to use a ruck of bristle brushes and also a selection of synthetic brushes as well. Sometimes I use, one of the things I really love about gouache is the fact that you can put it on like oil, or you can put it on really thin. All depends on the mood you're in. Oh, a poem. Right, anyway, I'm going to start with putting some sky in, and to do that, a little splodge of water. Start off with white, add some of this, clean the brush. I must try to get into the habit of cleaning my brush in between picking up dibs of paint. Into that I'll put the primary blue, and I've got a nice pale sky colour which I will build into, so there we go. Putting this on reasonably thickly, but because I've got the underpainting I can leave gaps. There, just putting some plain white. Over the trees. As I said before, I'm not going to have a particularly dramatic sky because the drama of the painting is the trees silhouetted against the sky. So I'm mixing on the paper. I love this paint. I should probably get quite excited painting this. This is the first painting I've done with this new setup. and I've painted with gouache for years, and I've used all manner of gouaches for years. I was stuck on Le Franc and Bourgeois French ones, which I absolutely love. But that was when we were going to France every September to stay with a friend, and not far from Saint, and there was an absolutely beautiful little art shop in Saint where I used to go and buy this stuff every year. But it's not so readily available in this country, and it's quite expensive. So I looked at all the others, and I tried the odd tube here and there, and quite frankly I've come down on Winsor & Newton designer, which according to everything you read are the best, and I just found when I was using others as well that they are. I also got some of the Aquafines, and they're all right, they're good, but they're not, they don't have the same covering power, they don't have the same punch as these. And the thing with gouache is you need plenty of punch. Well, I do. I like to use gouache fairly thickly. I like to use it almost like oils. I like to mix on the paper, as you can see. And what I love about it is the clarity of the colours, and that's why I've chosen these colours. They're all strong, bright, vibrant colours in their own right, and I'll be able to make some pretty pictures. And so far both of the colours I'm using are really good. I'm trying to work fairly quickly because I know otherwise you're going to be sitting there watching paint dry literally, which is not a really amazing thing to do. I'm trying to get the sky fairly cold blue but still sunny, because I'm heading in favour of either autumn or spring. I haven't decided yet. I love being an artist. It's like being God. You can make up your own mind about all sorts of things. I used to also love directing plays, because you could really build your own universe there. I'm using the brush strokes quite impressionistically here, trying to get some movement into the clouds and sky. Gouache sparkles when it's on, I love it. And I think if I've got favourite paints, they've got to be oil and gouache, for the same reasons. They're unique in the way they handle. I quite like the convenience of acrylics, but you can't squidge around with them like this, especially as I do most of my painting either outdoors or in here under rather heavy duty daylight bulbs. Paint tries to dry, no, paint tends to dry very quickly, and gouache keeps its sogginess a lot better than acrylics, but it still dries fairly quickly, which is a good thing and a bad thing, depending on what you want it to do. You see the difference between this primary blue and the ultramarine I put on this morning. It's completely different blue, and yet it's still a skyy sort of colour. I'm wittering. I'm learning as I go, and every time I learn something I'm getting quite excited talking about it. There, we've got a sky of sorts. Now, spring or autumn, spring or autumn, spring or autumn, spring. I feel spring-like. So, I will get my primary yellow, tad of manky water, the middle green, just a touch. See how strong these colours are, look at that. That is literally just a touch on the corner of the brush. Some white to tone it down because it's quite a long way away. Touch of the Naples. And there is my distant trees. It's that time of year that's just going past, where the trees are this lovely new acid green. I'm leaving gaps of the yellowy colour behind. Now, when you're going over, put the second layer on, you've got to be quite careful don't pick up the bottom layer. It's not tricky, but you've got to balance the amount of water. Not quite as carefully as when you're doing watercolour, but if you use a lot of water and scrub into it, you'll pick it up again. Okay, now into that colour I'm going to put a dab of Prussian Blue. Just a tiny amount. And that is a tiny amount. These colours are so saturated, they're beautiful to work with. So these tiny little tubes I've got look like lasting. As long as this palette works, they should last me for quite a long time. Now I'm keeping this a little bit wetter because I don't want it to be quite as opaque as the top one. I want to have a little bit of the underneath colour showing through. Just double. Perhaps I shall call my style doubleism. So I'll be quite honest, I am trying to develop a specific style for using gouache, which is different. I'm trying to get it to work in with the nature of the paint and this glorious glowiness of it. There's no detail, I'm just scribbling. I'm trying to make it a bit darker at the base where the shadow is, and to give a little bit of definition to the rest. But because of the texture of gouache, I can just scumble over the underneath bits and give the impression of fine detail. And I can do it a lot sooner than I can in oil. I'd have had to wait quite a while for the undercoat in oil to be dry enough to do that with. Too much water. Put some trunks in there after. do for the background trees for now. I'm coming down the painting, as you may have noticed. I'm going to use a slightly bigger brush. Still using the bristly ones. These are quite cheap, the works type brushes, which I bought because they were practically giving them away, and I've had them for years and they still kept their integrity as brushes. It's quite surprising, really. Right, okay, now I'm going to put this ivy brambly sort of undergrowth thing going up there. I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to put lots of dark, and then because it's gouache I can go over the top of it. I'm going to add some of this beautiful purple colour to that, and some more of the green. Right, that's that bit done. Now into that I'll put some of the olive green and raw sienna. Bash the brush. Purple going into that, and the Prussian. Some even more darky bits underneath. Now, touch of the Naples yellow into that dark green, And there we have a sort of highlighty bit. There, I've got some of that. Now some more undergrowthy stuff. I'm going to use the raw sienna. And mix some of these other greens into it to edge it down. A tiny touch of indigo. Too much. This is more grassy. Or grassy, depending on where you want to come from. I want this sort of vaguely grassy. But see how, using this fairly dry, I can let the watercolour show through underneath. And it all becomes part of the same picture that way. And where that goes down behind here, I'll darken it to give it a bit more recession. Touch of the umber. Touch of the indigo. And by using these earth colours along the bottom, everything you get becomes earthy. Mixing these up now. Letting the brush strokes speak for themselves here. Well, hopefully. Put some tiny touches of the Naples yellow. Give it some more brightness. And some more dark bits. Right, so I'm going to have a light bit of grass there. Pum pum pum. Right, some more darky bluey bits there. It's just a darker version of the same colours I mixed. It's got a basis of indigo blue. Well, indigo. I said before, what I'm painting on now is £140 not watercolour paper. The thing with gouache is you can paint on almost anything with it. I particularly like painting on canvas where it behaves more like oil paint. It's good because you can do this scumbly stuff. It's nice to have some sort of a texture underneath it, but you can make your own texture because it can dry quite lumpy. Now I need to start working out where the light's coming from. It's hitting those trees over there. I think so as I can have interesting shadows coming down here, I'll have the light coming from there, so it'll catch those side of these trees and I can throw nice dark shadows coming down there. And this bit is going to be much lighter. So Naples yellow, bit of bright yellow, touch of the middle green, and raw sienna, and let this, it's quite watery so it'll dry fairly transparent, show a bit of the stuff coming underneath it. I've got all my light colours, a touch of white, touch of both yellows into that green, and I've smashed up my brush, so I want to put some light bits. I'll reinstate a lot of this when I've got more shadows in. I'm just trying to sort of feel for where the lights and where the darks are going to be. And the good thing, or one of the good things about gouache, is that you can go over your darks with lights and go over your lights with darks. Right, now got that bit. I'm going to use a softer brush. Which one? I'm not sure. That one. A little 1/4 inch, what is it? Oh yeah, it's a Scepter Gold. Very, very old brush. I take a sort of perverse pride in how old and tatty my brushes are sometimes. Now, I'm having a light coming in that way. So I'm having some nice shadowy colours. Mixing a touch of the magenta into that dark greeny colour. Adding some of the Prussian Blue. No, that's the Prussian Blue. And some of the brown sepia colour. Now that is pretty damn dark. Now you go down the dark side of the trees. See how the drama starts to take place now. And that wasn't an earthquake. That was me dropping a nut on my camera. By mistake. I'm I'll put another one there. Don't know why I did that, probably because I can. This one, as I said, reason for this tree is to keep the eye from zooming out of the picture. Now, I need my little rigger. Where have you gone, rigger picker? There should be one in that bowl, but there isn't. There's one. Wonderful investment, this brush. SAA Pretend Sable, well, imitation sable, and I got 3 of them. They were really cheap and they're brilliant brushes. I've hammered them and hammered them and hammered them, and they still come back for more no matter what I give them. Still with the dark colour, I want to put in some branches. See, that's another thing with gouache, you can water it down almost to watercolour level. And draw beautifully with it. One thing that quite a lot of my students get stuck on is when it comes to trees, every time a branch goes off, the bit above it gets a little bit thinner. So you need to taper your tree trunks to start with. If you don't, you end up having to do what I did there and have to make it thicker at the bottom. I just got this far and my camera sang a little tune to me to tell me it was stopping down, which was quite nice of it. Its batteries ran out, so hopefully I won't have missed anything. So I took the opportunity to go and make a cup of coffee, so cheers. And now I've put my little rigger down somewhere and can't find it. Where did I put you, little rigger? Oh well, use a different one. What's this one? I know what I'll use my number 4. I'm talking to myself, it's rubbish, but never mind. Can't find any of my brushes. That's the one. It's the number 4 round, and I also took the opportunity to give my paint a bit of a squirt with one of these things. Now carry on. Right, I should use Diddy brushes after. Now I've put all the dark sides of the moon on. I'll put some light on. Start off with white. Mix it into this raw sienna. I'll put a tiny touch of the Venetian red. Tiny touch more. And that gives me a nice warm light colour. And I'll put that on there. Now, I'll do the rest. And you may have noticed that I did all that with one dip of that little brush. Now, same brush, clean all the water off it, well, clean all the paint off it, just damp. And all I'm doing is taking a damp brush down the join between the light and the dark. And lo and behold, you've got round trees. No, not chocolate, round trees. Right, so got a little bit of solidity into those trees. Now still using this, which is pure sable by the way, it's an SA8 Kolinsky. Again, several years old. I won't bore you with the age of all my brushes. But that's the bit I was going to do, that very first one, which I forgot. Nah. Okay, that's where we are now. I'm going to mix some Naples yellow into that light trunk colour and a dash of white, actually quite a lot of white, because I want to put some dabs of highlight just sprinkles of light here and there. One thing I really, really do love about gouache is this ability to dab really bright colours on top of dark ones. I can't think of anything else you can get the same effect in. I'm not making this solid line, I'm just putting like spots of sunshine. Right, that's that. Now I'm going to put some leaves on those trees now. Clean that good brush. Get another bristly one. And it's spring, so I'll get some of this nice mid-green. Put some of the yellow into it. Dab of white. I'll leave that and put some darker ones in first with a different brush. Again, I've got the mid-green base. Put some of the indigo into it. Some of the yellow. Right, now I'm using a fairly stiff bristle brush here. And I'm stippling. And this is the middle green for these leaves. Now, clean that colour out. Found my rigger. Now I've got this bright green. Remember the light's coming that way, so I need a bit more white in it. one and mix some of the really dark colour that I had already on my palette into that green. Trying to show where the shadowy bits of leaf go here. Maybe it's a bit more summery than it was. Need some more of a light colour. It's not spring anymore. It's taken me so long to paint this picture. It's turned into July while I've been painting. Right, I'll leave that because it's getting a bit too much. Now, here I want that sunlight coming through. Mix some very, very bright greeny colour, put some white in it. Some of that colour and just another earthquake. Right. Under painting, now I'm going to get some shadows down there. Dark greens. Prussian and some of that mid-green. coming up from the bank of the river. Some sepia into that greeny browny colour. Add some of the Prussian Blue. Again, a bit more of a reddy colour. And there, this undercut riverbank. What I'm doing now is I'm just picking up different shades of green from the palette, different places, just to break these blobs up a bit. Maybe it's blobism that I'm painting. Using a soft round, I'm going to put some smooth bits. No, actually I won't use the round, I'll use that little flat I was using before, if I can find it. There. Now, I'm going to mix some of the raw sienna with some Naples yellow, which will give me something very similar to yellow ochre. Maybe touch the other yellow in it. Into that I'm mixing a little bit of the very bright green, and here just added a little bit of white to the mix, just to make things a little bit more interesting. Right, now this forward bit, I'll be doing some more to that, it's a bit stark, but this forward bit, very bright yellow, some of the bright green. Right, okay, now use some of this purple colour the shadowy bits. And the reason I'm using purple violet is that it's the complementary colour of the green and the yellow, so it should make a big contrast just in foreground here. Now I'll do more to that. I'm going to put all flowers and stuff dotted about in there. There, now I'm going to use a nice big round brush. I'm going to use the lid to mix up some whites and some sky colour, and some of this grey, and then we'll do some river. square brush. That one will do. Need to dry it off a bit. Then get some of this dark browny colour. I'm just going to put a hint of reflection in there. I should have waited for that to dry. Right, get the rigger again. Mix up nice milky white. Now, putting some darks to intersperse with this, and because I'm painting water, I'm using a lot of water to keep the paint fluid. I need some raw umber with a touch of the olive green in it. Tiny touch of purple, which should darken it completely. Work. There, that's it. Bit more brown. This little river that I'm dibbling on here is called the River Clywedog, and it's this time of the year, May time, it's very quiet, gentle little stream. And in January, when you get the snow melts up on the moors, it's a savage little beast. It rips trees out by the roots. It killed several people, and yet In the summer it's just this gentle little trickle. Right, I've got lots of darks in there. I'm going to put an even darker dark. Just along there. Now, pure white sparkles on it. Right, now I'm going to put some, don't know what sort of flowers, I'll just sprinkle in some yellows. Oh, it could be gorse bushes. Some of this primary blue. Some white. This is what I like to do with gouache, is just put these little sprinkles of colour. Hopefully it's working again. I don't have a lot of confidence in myself with this camera. Just dotting in more flowers here and there. water, little bits of dancing light. And here we'll have some pretty poppies. Perhaps they're not poppies, they're some sort of pinky reddy flowers. The point is to put the hottest colours in the foreground so that it sings. A little bit of light coming through. Right, I'm fiddling now. Mix up a nice yellowy green. Using green and yellow, I think, to make a yellowy green. Bit of white. I want it fairly milky, and I'm just going to put some flicks. Bit acid. And just the odd finishing touch here and there in the trees, some of this very dark colour. Again, I'm just using the rigger, and I'm going to put the odd twig. Right, I'm leaving it. I'm faffing and fiddling and it's far too messy, but there we go. A little gouache painting called, I don't know, Summertime and the Living is Easy. That'll do. Just a demonstration of the way I'm trying to develop gouache now. Think maybe I could do a bit more to it, put some more lights up there, but I'm not going to now. I'm going to leave it where it is, put it to one side and put a mount round it, see what it looks like. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a bit long, but hopefully it might have been worth it. I think I need a little bit more oomph in those trees there. Use the rigger. This is where I really wish I had the nerve to flick. Just put a little bit more light flicking into those trees there. These early bits that I did look a little bit dead. I don't know whether I'm spoiling it or not. Right, I'm definitely just fiddling now, so I'll leave it. I'll take a photograph of it later on, finish the thing off with. But enough is enough.